trust me, I love defense.
You get all of that? You got all that?
Yeah.
Woo! Yeah, you got all that.
They were still scoring touchdowns in 1977.
Yeah. Happy Friday, Falcons fans. Welcome back to the Friday Five. I'm your host, Will McFadden. I am joined, as always, by Tori McElhaney and Taryn Walk. We are going to go over the 5 things that you need to know about the Atlanta Falcons heading into this weekend's matchup against the Washington Commanders. The Falcons 1-2, coming off of a loss that a lot of people have spent a lot of time talking about this week. So they have a chance to get right back on the horse and head into the bye week on a positive note. But kind of before we really dig into the state of the Falcons and things like that, I kind of want to just know where the fans' heads are at. We do a mailbag twice a week on AtlantaFalcons.com. Tori, you kind of got the first crack at the mailbag this week. What were you met with when you went to go look at the questions the fans were asking?
A lot of anger about where the offense is, which I think is valid when you, in the last 8 quarters of play, you've scored one touchdown, and the argument could be made that once you got, inside the 10, the Vikings, based on what the game was, let you score that touchdown. Yeah. So ultimately, I think that there was a lot of, the fan sentiment is really disappointed in the offensive production at this point in time. And that's where they've landed all week long. And I don't think that anything that anybody said in a press conference was going to change that sentiment. I don't think anything that anyone has shown on film reviews or anything was going to change that sentiment. The only thing that's going to change that sentiment is if this Falcons offense, goes out against the Washington Commanders and does what they say they've wanted to be. And until they do that, the fan sentiment is going to remain. Until you start scoring touchdowns, until you're more consistent within your operation, there's nothing really I can say to kind of discount or discredit what the fans are saying. That's I understand, and I think it's incredibly fair and incredibly valid when you go through a game that you lose 30-0 to an NFC South opponent and move to 0-2 in divisional play. And that's, again, the Falcons are at a prove-it-to-me point with this fan base, and that's where they currently sit.
And Taryn, you've done a great job covering all of the press conferences throughout the week, talking to the players, the coaches, and sharing that news on your Twitter account, @TarynWalk.
There you go.
So what have you been met with, and what's the fan sentiment been in kind of your replies?
Ooh, the people are active on the Twitter. I don't know that the vibe has changed from Sunday to now. This is Thursday when we're recording it, and I don't think it's going to change unless there's a completely different outcome this Sunday. So it's a little bit of a scary place right now scrolling the feed. I will say yesterday, going off of what Tori, and yesterday as in Wednesday, going off of what Tori was saying about not knowing where the offense is, Garrett Chapman from SI asked Zac Robinson about the external view that this offense is predictable. And to that, Robinson said, "We don't feel that way. I feel like sometimes when you have these types of games, as coaches, you say, okay, do we need to pull back to simplify? Maybe we're trying to do too much from a schematic standpoint." That's always what we're looking inward as coaches. Okay, maybe we put too much on the play. We were trying to scheme too much, and we need to simplify it. So I would actually kind of counter to say, in these moments, you typically try to get simpler.
Gotcha, yeah. I mean, so it sounds like, again, as coaches are supposed to do, they're digging in to figure out what didn't work,
yes.
Right? And a lot of times you'll hear that coaches and players will say, it's outside noise, it's things like that. But at a time like this, I kind of think when you are looking for how do we get back on track, you got to kind of be aware of what is being said. Tori, have you gotten the sense this week in talking to the coaches and players, have they heard that? Have they heard those criticisms? And how do they feel? What's been their response to kind of the anger I think that the fan base has at this?
I think they kind of have the same reaction as what I just had, where it's it's all fair. Yeah. When you lose 30-0 against a NFC South opponent that hadn't had a win yet, it's fair criticism. And I think Raheem Morris kind of said it best when he was like, when you play as bad as the Falcons played this past Sunday, it's warranted. You have all of these stones that are being thrown, and Like, there's no doubt. He said we were, quote, clearly predictable last week that we could not do anything. So rightful stone throwers, throw away. I have no arguments, no fights, no nothing against that. And I think, honestly, like, when you lose like that, that's the only approach there is. Like, you can't, there's nothing to say to change what that performance was. Again, all you can do is the next time out, be better. And I go back to what Zac Robinson said, and I said that in my film study this past week about like what the game was against the Carolina Panthers, I was like, I've watched the film. I've gone through every play. I can tell you all there is to know about like what we saw, but really what I say doesn't matter. What Zac Robinson said in the locker room after that game, where he's like, this is a make or break week for us, and for the Falcons, we need to be able to look back at this week and say that's the week that changed everything for the better. And that's what Bajan said in the locker room after that game. And it's something that like I've kind of clung to this week. It's like nothing really matters. What you say doesn't matter. Like what you put out on film doesn't matter. Like go out and perform well against the Washington Commanders and get back on track.
Something that came to mind this, like literally today when Jesse Bates was talking to the media, is a week ago we were asking him, like, how do you get the younger guys to turn the page from a big win? Mm-hmm. Today we're asking him, how do you get the younger guys to turn the page from a big loss? Obviously, one comes with a happier connotation than the other, but it's still the same vibe in a sense that you can't be thinking about Carolina when Washington is in Atlanta.
Yeah, I think that was a fascinating question that was asked because it did get me to think that it's like the approaches are different, but like the pull to kind of stay in the past is very present in both ways. But that's what's so interesting. It's like, on the one hand, I want to fast forward just through this week because nothing anybody is going to say matters because after a loss like that, it's about what you do and about especially what you do the next time out. And yet what they're doing on the field and in the facility is going to directly play into what you do out there on the field on Sunday. So on the one hand, this week is extremely important. On the other hand, this week is kind of like Sunday to Sunday. Like that's what matters, what you do. However, there was an action the Falcons took this week, a couple of actions, in fact, that should hopefully play into the result being a positive one on Sunday. Taryn, do you want to walk us through the decision to kind of move on from wide receivers coach Ike Hilliard?
Yes, so it came out on Monday night that the Falcons released wide receivers coach Ike Hilliard, and passing game coordinator TJ Yates is going to resume those responsibilities moving forward. Yates has been with the Falcons since 2021, and he was the wide receivers coach from 2022 to 2023 before he became quarterbacks coach last year and then earned another promotion this year. So that is a big week 3 change. Yeah,
so TJ Yates has experience working with Drake London for his first 2 seasons. But I think the move is a little bit bigger than just getting TJ Yates back working with those guys. You know, Tori, why do you think ultimately the Falcons felt that this was a move they had to make at this time?
All I can kind of say is what Raheem Morris has told us about the move, and that's that it was quote-unquote performance-based. And I think that he was asked a couple of questions about it on Wednesday, the first time that we were able to speak to him after the move was announced on Monday evening. And he kind of, the part of the quotes that he said that I kind of hung on to is that he was kind of asked about the context of the fact that Drake London, Darnell Mooney, Ray McCloud had career years statistically last season, and now you're 3 games into this season and they don't have the production that I think many are wanting them to have at this point in time. And also the fact that the stat is what it is, that no wide receiver or tight end for the Atlanta Falcons has caught a touchdown pass 3 games into the 2025 season. Like that in and of itself, like that stat alone is just so like jarring, especially for this offense that has the amount of first round draft picks that this group does.
Great point.
So I think what Raheem said was that he wanted to be able to go into that room and present to those guys the right way to get things done, that they have high expectations, they have high goals that they want to reach. You just talked about going last year to the point of like they had career years.
You almost had two guys with 1,000 yards, right? Darnell was 8 yards shy of breaking into that, and they were one of 4 teams with 2 receivers in the top 25 of receiving yards. So, this was a group that put up numbers last year.
Yeah, and the quote is right now we have wideouts without touchdowns. Right now we have wideouts that are craving the ball, and it's not just Mike Penix. It's not just them. There's no blame going around, but obviously when you make moves like that, it feels like it. You have to make moves like that. But he said that he had to make this directional decision for the group because you need to have the environment, the coaching, the details, everything right in order to get the offense moving in the right direction. And the elephant in the room is this decision is hopefully what they believe is going to get things back on track. Now, whether or not that happens is anyone's judgment. The Falcons themselves have to go and prove that. And I know we're going to talk more about Zac Robinson moving from the coaching box down to call plays on the field. But all of this stuff, I'm kind of okay, you've made these changes. Do we see that manifest on Sunday? I don't know. I have no idea.
I do think that's kind of, and it was a question in the mailbag was, a move like this, how quickly are you going to see the fruits of it? And I think part of the reason the move was made is because of the success. We saw what this group can look like when things are going well. We saw that just last year, and Michael Penix was supposed to help take the roof off of this offense, not have, the offensive, or at least the passing game kind of look the way that it has been. So that move has been made, but will we see the immediate impact of it on Sunday, or will it kind of take some time and it be after the bye week? Another move that we could see immediate impacts from is the decision to pull Zac Robinson, the offensive coordinator, down from the coach's booth where he has been since he arrived here in Atlanta to the field with Michael Penix Jr. Taryn, you want to walk us through kind of the details of that move?
Yeah, so the Falcons hired Zac Robinson last year, and from the start, he said he was going to call plays from the coach's booth. Well, also on Monday, was that Monday?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Monday.
I don't know what day it is.
Yeah, I know, yeah.
Long week.
Also on Monday, head coach Raheem Morris did say that Robinson will now be calling plays from the sideline. The thought is that will help Michael Penix Jr., especially as a younger coordinator, and clean up these communication issues that they've had sporadically, whether it was the crowd noise in Minnesota or the headset issues in Carolina. And what's interesting is Atlanta is the first time that Robinson has been in the coach's booth. When he was with the Rams from 2019 to 2023, he was always on the sideline. And he's on the sideline when it comes to practices. Well, sideline as in right there next to Michael during practice. That it may be more familiar. Maybe we will see the fruits of this change sooner rather than later. But if you listen to the Falcons Audible podcast, plug, Shock and Arch both talk about their experience as quarterbacks and having their play caller on the sideline and the benefits of it. It's really just that personal communication that everyone has referenced when talking about this move, where you can see the quarterback's eyes. You can see if he's confident or nervous, or not just the quarterback, but the other players. Even Robinson used the example of, hey, Chris Lindstrom, how are you feeling out there? Rather than having to go to Dwayne Ledford and asking for a vibe check. It's just a direct line of communication.
I also think that, let's go back to Sunday. It was very obvious, and Raheem Morris said this, Michael Penix said this, Sunday was not Michael Penix's day.
Nope.
That was honestly, not even arguably, that was the worst performance that he has had as the Falcons starting quarterback.
Yep.
And he seemed uncomfortable in the pocket. And he was not hitting open receivers, something he talked about this week. I've got to get the ball in the hands of guys when they're open. So these are all things that are happening in the moment, and it never really felt like he could get out of that, which is very common amongst young quarterbacks, and especially when things are snowballing to the effect of what they were on Sunday. And I think something that has come up as a theme over the course of the last 4 days of our reporting is that Raheem Morris, Zac Robinson said that they did not do enough as coaches, and other players around Michael Penix did not do enough as his teammates to help him out when he was struggling. And when you have a quarterback that is only going into his 7th start, that's vitally important, that you have some pick-me-ups.
Did they provide any examples of something they didn't do or something they could do moving forward?
So I think that Zac moving down to the sideline is a very obvious, we did not have the things in place to have the conversations that we needed to have in the moment efficiently.
So even if they wanted to have some of those conversations, it was like, we can't.
Right,
because you're up. Okay, so.
And so I think that's one. And then I also think receivers, tight ends, there were some drop balls. So even Zac Robinson, one of the runs that he has where he kind of stutter steps, and it probably would have been a 10-plus yard gain, got turned into maybe a 2-3 yard gain. Like, even when Michael Penix was not, was not actively kind of missing guys on routes or making kind of the wrong decision, there wasn't any help around him either.
Gotcha.
So I think that also falls on receivers. It also falls on running backs, offensive line. It was a whole operational issue that even if Mike was high, others were low. And then if others were high, Mike was low. And it just never got in sync. And so all of this is kind of the microcosm of, I think, the move of Zac Robinson down to the field. And I do think that Zac Robinson was the one that he said that he went to Raheem Morris about potentially making that move this week. He really thought it was a time for a reset. And he said that he does believe that this is where he'll be for the remainder of the season, barring how things change or things go. But again, will this mean anything for what the Falcons show production-wise, scoring points-wise on Sunday? Again, I don't know. I don't have the answer to that. We could go out there and it could look the exact same, or it could look totally different. And I don't know. At this point in time, I don't know what that's going to be and how that's going to manifest. But at least the Falcons have tried to do something. They took what the 30-0 loss in Carolina was. They've made changes. They've evolved some things. They've tried to throw some darts at the wall and see what sticks and what works. And this is their plan right now moving forward. We'll see if it works out.
The Week 5 bye is kind of a blessing and a curse in a sense that we're talking about these two changes. Are we going to see return on investment? Not return on investment.
That's fair. That's a fair. That's
investment's
the term.
A weird word, but change, something that is actually happening,
a tangible kind of effect.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. A cause and
effect. There we go.
So
Science.
I would say the Week 5 bye is a blessing at this point. Everybody was like, "Man, that's such an early bye." If you're the Buffalo Bills, Kansas City Chiefs, you've been to the playoffs 3, 4, 5 years in a row, then you can start looking at where's the bye? Man, it would be great if that was Week 11, right? But there's always been, in my mind, a benefit, especially when you have a new element like a quarterback for the first time in there as starter. An early bye lets you get under the hood. If something kind of the way things have unfolds, you need to make some changes. All right, let's adapt to a new normal. A new normal for the Falcons this season seems to be a pretty good defense, and I feel like we've lost a little bit of sight of the defense performance. Now, it wasn't their best game this season. That came in Week 2 against Minnesota when they were lights out, and I want to remind everybody that. But they weren't bad on Sunday either. So, Taryn, what has been kind of the discussion about the defense this week and kind of your thoughts on them?
The team itself isn't going to give credit anywhere after a loss like that.
Fair.
But when you look at it, the defense held its own for what it was given. I mean, the Panthers, you have to give them that first touchdown. It was a 4-yard rush from Bryce Young. But then there were 2 field goals, a defensive touchdown, and that 1-yard rushing touchdown in the fourth quarter. The game's kind of out at that point. So the defense locked in after that first touchdown. So, every unit has to be better. Every unit, quote-unquote, played poorly last Sunday. You can't say anything else after a 30-0 loss. But the defense was the lesser of the evils. I mean, overall, the Falcons rank second in the NFL right now with 227.3 yards per game. At this point last season, the defense was allowing 326.7 yards per game. That's basically a 100-yard difference, give or take a penny or two. It's a small sample size, but it's a good start.
Also, that is the second lowest yards per game average allowed through 3 games of a season all time. The last time that it was less than that was 1977, which everyone was talking about, grit splits era.
I was going to say that is the grit splits defense.
Yeah.
Are y'all aware of just the importance of the grit splits, not just to me, but...
I am.
Yeah?
I am not.
All right. Well, cool. I've got a couple of fun facts for you. The grit splits allowed 192 points during the 1977 season, which is the fewest ever for a 14-game season. So... I bet you didn't know that an Atlanta Falcons defense holds a defensive record for fewest points allowed in a season, but the Grits Blitz was that good. The most points that they allowed in a single game that season was 23.
Wow.
They pitched 2 shutouts. They also lost a game 3-0 that year to the Buffalo Bills, which... if I'm a defensive player, I'm kind of like, we didn't even lose this game.
No.
Are you kidding me?
I'd be like, that's a win.
Yeah,
We won.
Right? We didn't even allow a
hockey
touchdown.
game.
We just allowed a field goal.
Right, yeah.
I know it's 1977, but like they were putting up points back in that era too. You know, wasn't all just kicking.
They were still scoring touchdowns in 1977.
Yeah.
But just because,
not against the Falcons.
There you go. Nobody could. Stonewall. But because this defense is already off to a great start, you know, I know that we can discuss the matchup part of this in a little bit, but this week there's not a ton to like dig into defensively because of all this stuff offensively, but I still feel like we shouldn't lose sight of just the start that this group has had. They are currently 6th in sacks per pass attempt, 10.4% of the time there's pass attempt. Falcons are getting a sack, which is crazy. Just think about how far we've come that we're saying that right now.
Yeah.
They're 8th in the league in pressure rate at just over 40%. 10th in points allowed, 17.3, and that's just by the defense. So I was able to take out that pick 6. 10th in rushing yards allowed per game, 1st in passing yards allowed per game.
Wow.
So
I did not know that.
A lot of talk about like the run defense. Is it going to be able to hold up if you're focusing a lot on this pass rush? And the second, it turns out, you're able to sustain both right there. And this is kind of my favorite so far, is they're 2nd in time of possession. Now, I know that has not resulted in wins yet, but they have really, I think, controlled every game they've been in fairly nicely. It's just the ability to score points, right? Like, they've moved the ball, though.
I also think that they have gotten off the field on 3rd down.
Exactly.
Like, that was something that, in Carolina specifically, when people are like, oh, like, the defense, I'm like, but I believe they held Carolina to like 3 of 11 on 3rd down.
Yeah, they were really good on 3rd down.
Like, they got off the field and or had to settle for a field goal because field position was what it was. Like, I'm okay with that. Like, I'm always about trust me, I love defense. I think defense wins championships. I know that this is a quarterback pass heavy, era that we're living in, but I love defense. I love watching good defenses get after it, and I think that what I've seen from this defense and what Jeff Ulbrich has done and what these new pieces have done, I think it's just been very refreshing that the moves and decisions that were made in the offseason are panning out for this unit specifically, and now you need the offense and special teams pick it up and to the point of I know everybody is. I know I tweeted about the stats that Taryn was giving this week, and everybody's like, finally, when the Falcons have a solid defense, their offense can't score, and it's I get it, I understand that point of view, but it's just it is kind of true to a certain extent. Like the defense is doing what they need to do to keep games in check. Yeah. And I like watching them play.
But you need all 3 phases.
Exactly.
But that's kind of what gives me a little bit of optimism that they can figure out this offensive piece because they figured out the defensive piece, right? Like that was the last challenge ahead of them. So now you got to get the next one. But there's a challenge ahead of Atlanta's defense this weekend, Taryn. They've got a couple of mobile quarterbacks. We don't know necessarily which one we're going to see. You want to fill us in on the situation that they face with Washington's offense?
So Jaden Daniels is the starting quarterback, but he is dealing with a knee injury and did not play in Week 3. A familiar face to the Falcons, Marcus Mariota, stepped in Daniels' absence. What did he do? He threw for 201 yards and added 40 on the ground. He threw for a 43-yard touchdown and ran for a 2-yard touchdown. The Commanders beat the Raiders 41-24. I almost said 23. I don't know why. But Daniels was back at practice this week for the first time since his injury. Albeit it was in a limited capacity. So it's still up in the air. Everyone on the Falcons side has said, we're going to prepare for both. You expect him to say that. Dan Quinn, during his press conference earlier this week, said, we'll continue to rely on the medical team to fully clear Jaden Daniels. But what I can say is he is doing everything you can possibly can to get there. The guy is an ultimate competitor. You know that. I know that. He is absolutely digging. So I don't know who's going to play.
So then, Tori, how are the Falcons going about kind of It's not a new problem in the NFL,
No.
right? Over the course of the season, usually
Yeah.
you'll face this. So how are they going about preparing for both guys?
Well, the good news is for the Falcons is that both guys' skill sets are kind of working off of one another,
Yeah.
and they kind of do the same
It's
thing.
not like Jaden Daniels to Peyton Manning.
Right, exactly. I mean, yeah, like Marcus Mariota and Jaden Daniels, like there are obvious differences between their games, like especially because we know we covered Marcus, for a year here in Atlanta. And so, both guys are very willing to move out of the pocket if things break down. And not even when things break down. There are some RPO stuff that they do that they have design run specifically for the quarterback to get out in space. And I think that is where, as I'm thinking about how this defense plays this Commanders team, there is a small part of me that thinks that we could see a more conservative approach by Jeff Ulbrich and this defense to account for how Jaden Daniels and Marcus Mariota can pick up yards on the ground, whether it be on a scramble or an actual design run. And
You thinking like a defensive spy?
a little bit, yeah.
Okay.
I do think so.
So leaving a player to specifically be
Yes.
looking at the quarterback, eyes on the quarterback.
Yes,
Yep.
and so I mean that, and I also kind of mean maybe seeing even less full-out blitz opportunities. Like I don't think
Falcons
they can.
highest
They
blitz
are
rate in the
blitzing.
league.
Yeah,
this
they
year.
are.
It's crazy.
They are blitzing at a very high level, and they're seeing a lot of like productivity from those blitzes. And so I think that we may not. And this is just I haven't talked to Jeff Ulbrich. Like I don't know what he's planning to do against.
You're
Marcus
suiting up on Sunday, right? You're
Right.
gonna be
Yeah.
out
I'm
there.
actually
You're
the
wearing
one.
the green dot.
Yeah, I'm actually
Okay.
spying. I'm the one. But I do think that there could be a level of more like less blitzes, more conservative.
Keep it in front of you.
Keep everything
Don't
in
get-
front. Make sure that you have your lane, your spot, your assignment, and make sure the edges are kind of covered. I don't think that is a bad thing. And I also don't think it's going to be indicative of what we see from this defense kind of moving forward down the road. But I think when you know the threat level of either Jaden Daniels or Marcus Mariota getting out of the pocket, there needs to be adjustments made, and I think those could be some slight tweaks. So we may not see the sack numbers that you saw against J.J. McCarthy and the Minnesota Vikings in week 2. But I think that's okay if it means that you're not giving up a 10, 15-yard explosive from one of these quarterbacks, whoever they may be.
And I think kind of the state of Atlanta's offense right now, obviously coming off a game where you scored no points, like I could see the defensive game plan being a little bit more, hey, we got to keep this low scoring, so we may not take as many risks because we can't afford if something goes against us, at least right now, because we may not know what we're getting on the other side of the ball. The hope is one day that, you're putting a lot of pressure on opposing offenses, which puts you in the position to then kind of attack and be on your front foot. But the Commanders have the best yards per carry in the league right now. Obviously, with a dual threat quarterback, that's going to be a little bit higher. But they're also second in the league with 2.1 yards before contact on designed runs. So that's taking out scrambles, that's taking out any of the broken down plays. So this is an offensive line that can move the line of scrimmage. Atlanta's defense is going to have to be ready. But that is all we've got for you guys on today's episode of the Friday Five. The Falcons will be, you looking at me like you got something else,
You said
Taryn.
all we've got.
It's all
As
we've
if
got.
it
You got
wasn't
more?
great.
You got more?
As if it wasn't
to me.
great. No, I don't have any more. But don't say like all you've got.
All right, no, you get all of that. You got all that?
Yeah.
Woo! Yeah, you got all that. Is that better for you, Taryn?
Yes, but it was
All
a little
right.
loud.
That's what I'm talking about.
Now I'm
Turn
uncomfortable.
down your speakers because it's getting crazy in here, man. That is the energy we should have started the show with, but
I
we're
know.
ending it with the show, and I hope everybody takes that energy into their weekend and has an amazing one and is ready for hopefully an amazing game on Sunday.
Go Dogs.
Go
Oh,
Dogs.
my gosh.
There we go. Yeah, we can get into that. We got
Go.
two dogs and
No.
Yeah,
What
an
Bama.
elephant.
An elephant?
Crimson Tide. Crimson
You're
Tide.
turning crimson right now, so we should probably wrap up
I'm all the
this.
LA.
All right, thank you guys so much. This was great. Share it if you like it, and we will see you guys after the game on Sunday for Final Whistle. Until then, take care.